Hello YouTube and welcome to another video. In this one I'm going to be showing you guys how I put carbon fiber on the bottom of my X2 hull. This process is commonly called veneering or skinning, and it involves putting a single layer of carbon fiber over the surface of something purely for cosmetic reasons. This process generally does not add any strength or rigidity due to the characteristics of carbon fiber. The only way it would actually be beneficial as far as strength or rigidity goes is if you were actually adding it on an existing carbon fiber part which shared the same characteristics. The part of the project that I'm going to be showing you guys is probably only about 25% or less of the actual work that I had to do in this project, and that is because most of the work that I had to do is preparation work. If you're lucky enough to have a pristine hull without any gouges, holes, cracks, or repairs that are required, then your work will be a whole lot less, but you still need to make sure that you start off with a pristine surface. I'm going to take a minute to give you guys a little bit of a disclaimer, and that is that I've never actually done skinning before, and I've never worked with carbon fiber. I have worked with quite a bit of fiberglass over the past few months. I've done a lot of research and I've watched a ton of videos on YouTube about skinning. One thing that I learned from watching these videos is that a successful carbon fiber skinning job shares a lot in common with doing body work or fiberglass work, and that is that so much of the end product is determined by the prep work. I have documented most of the prep work on this hull, but I'm not going to show it in this video because that would make this video hours and hours long, and I've already put those videos out. As you can see, I've got about 3 or 4 different colors of material on the outside of my hull, and I will now basically go over it and tell you guys what I did and what I'm going to do. The reason why the preparation turned out to be such a huge project for me is because I had to do a bunch of repairs and I added what you call a front fill to my X2. Those of you who are keen on X2s may recognize that this is not a standard X2 front end. This is what you call a front fill. So I added this piece on, and I also had to completely rebuild the front end. The reason why I did this is basically 2 reasons. I'm putting an 1100 triple in this and I want the handling characteristics of this front, and also this hull had a huge amount of damage due to being crashed, and so this kind of got 2 birds stoned at once. I'm going to be adding a black pigmented epoxy to the bottom of the hull, and I'm going to be doing that basically for 2 reasons. One is that the carbon fiber weave will have slight openings in it, and I don't want to be able to see the white background through the weave of the carbon fiber. And the other reason is that the black pigmented epoxy, once I paint it on over the surface of the hull, is going to allow me to see where the imperfections are in this job. I'm going to cover this whole hull in some fairly thin black pigmented epoxy so that I can basically see where any imperfections or low spots are so that I can take care of them now. I will tell you guys that this is not typically the way that people go about doing this. Generally, what you would do is add 1 layer of pigmented black epoxy to hide the color of the underneath for the same reason that I am. But then you would wait for that to tack up. You would add a 2nd layer of epoxy, also black tinted or black pigmented, and then you would wait for that to tack up and you would use the tackiness of the epoxy to actually stick your carbon fiber down in place. I am going to opt out of that and use what they call Super 71 from 3M. It is a spray tack adhesive, and because I'm going to be doing sanding after the fact, I have to wait for it to completely cure, so I can't use the tackiness of the epoxy that I laid down to stick the carbon fiber down. So as an alternative, I'm going to be using the spray tack adhesive instead. The second reason, and probably almost as important or more importantly, is that I'm using a huge piece of carbon fiber. I'm going to try to do this all in one piece. I'm probably going to have to do maybe a couple of relief cuts in it somewhere. But I'm assuming that it's not going to lay down really easily. And so in order to make sure that it goes as smoothly as possible, I'm going to use the tack adhesive. That's going to allow me to lay the carbon fiber over the top of this and then kind of spray the tack on as I go and stick it down. If I was doing this with the epoxy and it tacked up, basically once the cloth touches, it's almost like a contact cement. Once the cloth touches the surface, it sticks down, and if you try to move or reorient the carbon fiber, it will actually damage the weave on the fiber, and then you have imperfections in your surface. So to avoid that, I'm going to use spray tack. Alright, I've mixed up a batch of epoxy. This stuff has about a 30 or 40 minute pot life, so it will give me lots of time to get it down. There is a timer for the stirring, so I'm ready to put it down. I mixed up 66 grams to get me started. I think I already told you guys the pot life on this stuff is about 30 or 40 minutes. And that is both good and bad. The good part of that is it's going to allow it to flow out and kind of smooth out. The bad part of it is that it's going to be soft and tacky enough for several hours for bugs to get stuck in it. I'm going to put this on fairly thick, but try not to put it on so thick that I get runs, because obviously runs are not going to be ideal. So far, I guess it's going okay. The epoxy is doing some sort of weird thing. I saw it doing it the other day, and I thought maybe it was because I had microspheres mixed in with it to make the, what do you call it, fairing compound. But it appears as though it is just a characteristic of this epoxy. Another problem that I'm having, which I kind of knew I was going to have, is all the bugs. There's one here, and one there, and one there, and one there, and I've already dug a few out. I'm gonna have to go over this whole thing again anyway, so I guess I'll finish it up. Try to finish it up just fairly quickly. And then I'll go back, start at the front and go back over the whole thing. Alright YouTube, I just finished putting the last bit of epoxy on. It is 3:32 in the morning. The epoxy does have a bit of ripple effect to it. Basically, just when it cures, it does that. Not exactly sure why that is. I'm not very happy about it, but once it's fully cured, I'll probably go at it with 120 grit sandpaper and wet sand it. It is now the following day. I have wet sanded this thing for about 12 hours straight, to the point where I don't have any skin left on the tips of my fingers in a couple places. And so now it is time to put on a second coat of epoxy. These cheap paintbrushes that I'm using, they lose a lot of hair and yeah, potentially could cause some problems. I'm thinking about maybe using one of these rollers. This is a trick that I learned from Andy at Boatworks today. Take your roller and wrap it with tape. And what that will do is allow you to pull any loose fluff off of the roller. I'll probably use another tape as well because this stuff isn't terribly sticky. So you put your tape on and then you peel it off, and any loose stuff will get pulled off by the tape. I am extremely happy with the way this went. It turns out that the best way to apply this stuff, as a paint anyway, is to roll it on with a roller and then go over it with a paintbrush. I now have the epoxy applied to the hull. It went on quite well and I am very pleased with the way it's turning out. You might be wondering why the lights are off and it's dark in here, and that's because I'm taking some preventative measures. The last time I applied epoxy to the hull, I had a huge number of bugs decide that they wanted to crash land onto my hull, and it really made for quite the mess. So what I've done, I've turned on the light over there so that if the bugs or whatever bugs are in here or come in here, they will hopefully fly over to that area and not over here. And I've also turned the light off over the door. Normally the bugs gather around the outside light, and then when I open the door, they either just get sucked in or they fly in because they see how bright it is in here. It's been about 2 hours since I finished putting this stuff on, and I am honestly getting a little bit concerned. Let's see if I can find an inconspicuous place to touch up here. This stuff was put on before. Oh yeah, it's coming off easily on my finger. That has me quite concerned. Oh, and there's a bug in it. The question is, can I get that bug out without making more of a mess? The precautions that I took to keep the bugs out of my paint worked last night. I got one in it somewhere around here. I don't even see, I think there's some little dots there from it. This final coat of epoxy has been curing for well over 24 hours now, and I'm going to scuff it up. It kind of hurts me to do this because the surface looks so nice, and well, it's not going to look great after this, but we're putting the carbon fiber on over this, and I need a surface that the new coat of epoxy can bond to. I now have the hull scuffed up lightly, and I'm coming to a part that's making me quite nervous. I'm now going to drape the carbon fiber over the top of this and decide where to cut it for the length. I don't have a good table or anything to set this on. I own a cat, so there's cat hair everywhere. And yeah, my shop is dusty because I've been doing a lot of fiberglass work, obviously, with this. So I'm going to do my best to keep it clean and hope that everything works out. For those of you who don't follow my videos, this will be the first time seeing the carbon fiber that I'm going to use for the bottom of my hull, and I chose a little bit different of a product here. It's a 2x2 twill, 6-ounce cloth, but it has green thread woven into it, so not as part of the carbon fiber. It is, I forget what kind of material it is, but it's basically just a plastic of sorts. It doesn't add any strength to it whatsoever. It's purely there for cosmetics. And I picked it because, I chose it because it's black and green are Kawasaki colors. I quite obviously only have one chance at this because this is all the fabric that I have. I'm starting to get quite nervous about this, but yeah, nothing to it but to do it, as they say. So I'm gonna fold it back over on itself this way. I think that should be fairly safe. I've folded the carbon back over on itself so that I see where the line across the back is. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to come this way, I guess 2 inches, because I'd rather leave a little extra there than not enough. I'm going to cut into the weave, and then I'm going to try very carefully to pull a thread through so that I can get a straight line across the back here. I might give up on this immediately if it doesn't pull easily, because I definitely do not want to damage anything. All right, I've pulled 2 carbon toes out. All right, folks. I'm stressing out here, but I think I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to spray some stuff on the center here. I really like the idea of starting here because it ensures that the roll is perfectly straight. So it probably won't end up perfectly straight by the time I get down to the end, but it's definitely a good starting point. So I'm going to unroll this a bit and try to shake it out to even out the fibers. I've got my reference tape on here, so what I'm going to do is pull this down the same amount on each side. Oh man, this is a scary moment, people. I could be ruining a whole lot of very expensive carbon fiber right now. Okay, so the carbon fiber is laid down through the center and there's no turning back now. If I tried to take the carbon fiber back off, it would almost certainly ruin it. So the only direction is forward right now. Quite nervous about this. You guys watching? Here goes nothing. Alright, what I'm going to do is pull it all over now. I think I have it seated as far as the glue goes. I do have one imperfection here already. It's a little better, but I don't think I'm going to be able to completely fix it. That actually worked out quite well. I got a slight imperfection right here. I don't know if the camera can even pick it up. Oh yeah, I think so. But stuff like that is going to happen when you're going around bends. I mean, somebody who has done this a few times would probably make very easy work of that. But yeah, I'm not too worried about it. If that is the worst that happens, I'll be happy. But I'm guessing that I'm going to struggle once it gets up around the front. I haven't really talked too much about this stuff, and I haven't researched into it enough to give you guys a course on it, but I'm pretty sure this is not an adhesive, it's a tacky material, and it's actually designed to be epoxy soluble. So you spray it on, it gets tacky, you put your material down, but then when you hit it with the epoxy, it actually gets dissolved by the epoxy. And so yeah, it doesn't affect the bond of the epoxy itself. Okay, I'm getting better at it already. I think what I'm going to do is stick this down along here, try to get it on there as evenly as possible, and then when I get to this front edge, I'm going to have to do a relief cut of some sort. I think it's just inevitable. This could possibly actually work out a little better than I expected. I'm going to try to make this fit together and see what happens. So I'm going to start at the center, come down through the center, and then I'm going to work my way back. And as I work my way back, I think it's going to bunch up, but I might actually not have to cut it. If I do, what I'll probably choose to do is cut it over where the exhaust hole comes out. Yeah, actually, pretty much certain that I'm gonna have to. Yeah, there's just way too much material bunched up here. Okay. This might actually work. Holy crow. It's gonna work. Wow. Okay, I need to trim the carbon fiber without screwing it up here. All right, I don't know how that worked, but it did. Yeah, wow. I've got one little kink in the carbon underneath, but it's not even, I plan on trimming that off. I'm just leaving it around the seam now to make sure that I have enough material. So I think I'm going to do the other side off camera because it's going to be the same as this, and I don't want this to be hours and hours long. So I'll come back when I get the other side fitted up. What do you think about the carbon? What do you think about it? You like it, eh? What do you think about the carbon? You like it so much. All right, YouTube, I ended up getting it down with a little help from my cat every now and then. And I didn't have to do any relief cuts, so I am extremely happy about that. I thought I was going to have to do some relief cuts here, but it ended up going on really well. Got a few minor imperfections. There's one here and here and here. It still looks really, really cool. I'm not sure if it is going to pick up on camera how neat this really looks. Of course, the second side went a little bit easier than the first side. I didn't get that same imperfection through this part here. I had it figured out by the time I got over here. I almost had one here, and I almost had one, I think through here there's kind of a little bit of a weevil, but anyway, it turned out really well. And once again, up along here, I didn't have to do any relief cuts, so I'm really happy about that. It turned out well enough. I was able to trim it up well enough that I think I'm actually going to leave it go right up through the front. I wasn't going to leave this part here. I was going to trim it back along there. But it went on so well that I'm just going to leave it as is. Some of these imperfections might actually come out a little bit when I put the epoxy on, because the epoxy will dissolve the glue and actually allow the carbon fiber to relax a little bit. But yeah, I'm not sure. I've never done this before, so I don't know exactly what to expect. I'm really, really anxious to get the epoxy on, and I want to do it right now. The only problem is it is currently midnight. For my first time ever working with carbon fiber, and the fact that this is a pretty sizable project, I used almost a full 3 meters of cloth by 50 inches wide. I do have a little bit of trimmings, but I am extremely happy with the way that turned out. Hopefully the next thing you guys see is me applying epoxy to this. That's gonna have to wait for the next video because this one is almost a half an hour long. I decided to release this in 2 parts, and in the next part I will be finishing this. I have applied a couple of layers of epoxy to this, and if you look closely at the thumbnail you can see that it is actually me putting down 1 coat of epoxy on the hull. The carbon fiber is going to look amazing. It is a huge amount of work, and I would absolutely not recommend that anybody else do this because it is ridiculous. It takes a lot of expensive material, it takes a lot of time, and it's going to take a lot more time. It's probably going to take me a lot of time before I get motivated to actually do the top of this thing, but we'll get the bottom of it all finished up so that you guys can see it. I'm not sure when the next video will be released because this project isn't actually completely finished. That being said, it is well underway and I am extremely excited to see what it looks like after it is wet sanded and polished. That is going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.